Welcome to another episode of Ready, Set, Rise. My name is Michael Ciervo, your host. And what I love about Ready, Set, Rise is it's an opportunity for us to listen to some fantastic guests about how to, first of all, get yourself both mentally, physically, and spiritually ready, set yourself up for success, and of course, rise to that challenge. Now, one of the great things I love about sitting in this chair is that I have an opportunity to speak to some amazing people and listen to their stories. And it's really amazing that we're going to be able to speak to my next guest. Because if I were to describe one word that would describe my next guest, it would be resilience. Now, everyone's going through some tough times during COVID, and resilience is one thing to describe him. So let me just give you a quick introduction to our next guest. He started off his career many years ago. Well, not that many years ago, but years ago. And over the last 30 years, he's ran and owned and operated several businesses, including a very successful oil and gas business. Now, after being forced to enter bankruptcy in 2015 with the low oil prices, the only position he was able to find was one as a coach here in Calgary. But in that time back in 2015, he realized the lessons that he'd learned was going to help him keep other people from going through the same thing he's gone through. He's researched successful companies, dug deep into all the reasons why these companies can go into bankruptcy and out of bankruptcy and succeed. And he's actually created programs in a book called The Cash Flow Creator. So I'm really excited the fact that he's able to do this. It is my great honor to introduce my good friend, colleague, and one of my coaches here in town, Mr. Wes Kowalchuk.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me here today.
No problem. You know, thanks for coming. I know that it almost didn't happen. You're rushing here. You had all these things to, you're a busy guy. So this is great, the fact that you can be here. But, with every show, we always start off with, can you give us a quote or a motto that you're currently living by and why?
Absolutely. One of the biggest ones that I think I've been living by for the last number of years has been a quote by Gandhi. So to paraphrase it, be the change you want to see in the world. And I created that into, it's actually my number 8 affirmation that I say to myself every morning.
Love it.
Is part of it is my wife and I are together and strong. We make more money than we can spend on ourselves or our families. So we use that money and our time to create the change that we want to see in the world.
Absolutely love it. There's no harm in making money. It's actually doing something with it.
That's right.
So it's amazing that you're doing it. And I think there's this evolution of not just the regular entrepreneur, but the socially responsible entrepreneur. Right. And, I didn't really get too much into your story, but when I talked about resiliency, you've been around for several different business iterations, and you started off as a paper boy. You and I started off as a paper boy. So walk me through your entrepreneurial journey. How did you get to the point that you start to create these programs? Because there's this resiliency that you went through.
Well, the resiliency comes from a lot of hard lessons learned, right? And stubbornness, I think. Sheer stubbornness.
Yeah.
I don't have the will to quit. It's not in me to quit. I keep getting backed up. I get knocked down, I get back up. When I look back, in my paper route in Calgary here, when at the age of 10, you can imagine what a Friday and a Saturday paper would have been back then. They were about an inch thick, right?
Yeah.
I would carry all the papers on my back in a double pouch. Right. Get my mom and dad to hold them up so I could stand up underneath it, and then I would start walking. Right. And it was a great experience. It made me strong in a number of different ways. One was physically strong because I had to get strong to carry all the papers, but it also started to teach me a few things about goal setting and stuff, which I wasn't aware of at the time. Mom and dad both were employees with another company. Mom come from a farming background, so there was a little bit of entrepreneur there. Mm-hmm. But in that paper route process, I had to go out and buy my own papers and then go collect from my clients. The problem I had was at the end of the paper route was a convenience store that just was all too happy to take all my profit from me, in the term of comic books and chocolate bars, right?
That's interesting. And we'll get into this later because we talk about profit and how people spend. It's all about cash flow when you talk into business. Absolutely. So you're a paper boy. You're in the military as well. You're a military man, right? So how did that happen? You're a paper boy, you grow up, and then you decide to serve. So
to make a really long story short, I grew up here in Calgary. When I was about 12 years old, Mom and Dad moved to Kelowna, BC, and in Kelowna, it's a very big tourist town, right? It's Canada's Hawaii, if you will.
Kelowna-fornia.
Yeah. And so there was only really two options to work out there. It was either you go pick fruit in an orchard or you go work in McDonald's.
Right.
And I tried the fruit thing, and McDonald's wasn't an option.
Yeah.
So when I turned 17, I joined the Army.
Wow.
And felt that would be a good career choice because I was in cadets for 5 years prior to that. And I was working my way into becoming a pilot, but when they wouldn't let me take the flight program, I went into tanks instead.
You know, tanks are cooler, man. You're right in the battlefield, right? So I'm assuming that when you go through this cadet training and you're in the military, you learn this discipline, right? And it's funny because it's not funny, but it's true. I was looking through your social media, and there's some videos of you doing these push-ups and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, there's that military background, because you know, it's something as simple as just doing push-ups, that routine, getting into that. So you get into the military, and then how do you transition from there into your next stage in your life? Well,
it was at that point in my life, I was getting a little frustrated with where things were going in the Army. I had a pretty heavy drinking problem back then, probably about the same time or a little bit before I started drinking. My mom told me I had a drinking problem. And I said, no, I don't have a drinking problem. I drink, I get drunk, I fall down. I don't see the problem. And I laughed. I thought it was funny. My wife, or not my wife, but my mom at the time, you know, I look back at it now and I know I broke her heart. I know I broke her heart. The good thing is, you know, going fast forward to 2016, you know, I found sobriety, right? But there's a whole lot of years in there where there was nothing but chaos and pain, destroyed relationships. I don't have much of a relationship with very many of my kids from my first marriage. I do have, you know, kind of a relationship with my oldest boy. My youngest boy from that marriage, not so much. The oldest daughter, not at all. So it's a struggle because of the alcoholism that, you know, I did destroy those relationships. So it's been tough. The only thing I can do now going forward is continue to live a life where I'm continually trying to improve myself, become a better dad, be a better husband, be a better contributor to society, right? And that's kind of where that affirmation really started to help me get a grip on my life, all through my alcoholism. And I didn't realize it at the time, but when I look back at it with hindsight after you become sober, you go, holy crap, was I ever selfish? Wow. What a selfish ass I was. And, you know, and there was even a point in there where I sacrificed not getting all the toys because I was making good money working in the oil patch. I worked as a driller on a drilling rig. I was making like $42 an hour. I was like 180, 190,000 a year. I had the money to buy all the toys, but I said I had 6 kids. They take a lot of money to support. So that was what I used for my excuse for my alcohol. I didn't spend the money on them. I spent it on myself. So I always made sure I had drinks. Right. It was that, and not until I got sober did I see that behavior. And that was kind of when I realized how dark and ugly my life had been. And I do owe a huge apology to my entire family for that, because I didn't know. Did you ever take the opportunity to actually apologize to them? I did. I have made amends to all of them except my oldest daughter. Right. And at some point that may happen, you know, who knows? Right. It's not on my time. It's on his time.
You know, it's one of the things I'm hearing is that you've appreciated or embraced vulnerability. Like as entrepreneurs, sometimes or just people in general who are going through some tough times, you go through this victim mentality that life is happening to you, right? And there are things in life that it's happening for you. And you're a great example of taking something that's happened for you and converting that or recycling that energy into something. What was the tipping point? What was the catalyst for you to say, hey, look, I'm fucked up, you know, messed up my life. How do I fix this? Like, what's that tipping point?
Well, that's a good question. You know, when I look back, I think there was 2. There was an incident where I just signed a really wicked contract with a partner. We thought we were going to make millions, like $50,000 a day kind of money. And we signed the deal in Calgary, went out to the Ranchmans, and last thing I remember, I punched back 4 double rum and Coke, and things got pretty fuzzy after that. Really? And I woke up, my laptop was stolen, my wallet was stolen, and the hookers that were in my room had taken it all.
Wow.
And, you know, I got screwed, but it wasn't the kind of I was planning on.
Right.
And that made me realize that I can't drink, right? So I switched from drinking hard liquor to drinking wine because I didn't like drinking it. So I only drank a little bit. Then fast forward about 12 years, in 2015, my daughter tried to commit suicide, my third oldest daughter. And in trying to help her get out of that situation, I asked her to move in with me and my wife, my new wife. And she did come and live with us for a while, but that didn't solve the problem. And a year later, she tried to commit suicide again. So I quickly found a place to put her into long-term drug treatment, which is a place here in Calgary called Adolescent Addiction Recovery Center. We call it ARC, run by Dr. Dean Voss, a great guy, amazing place. I did not know at that time when I put her in there to save her life that I would save mine. And it was really powerful. I told him I was willing to do anything to give her a second chance at life. And 3 weeks after, I was going to my first meeting, and this is how our divine guidance works in our lives. The guy that was the first guy I listened to about his story about alcoholism, I swear to God, he was telling my story, word for frickin' word. Right. It gave me goosebumps. And every story, my hand kept going a little higher, a little higher. And then at the end, it says, "Hi, my name's Wes. I'm an alcoholic." Right. That was just over 4 years ago. And today, I cannot imagine how good my life would be today. To not only go through what I went through in business. I mean, you briefly touched on my bankruptcy, but you know, when you run a business for 10 years and you make millions of dollars with it and you have a great lifestyle, and then all of a sudden you lose it, like you lose it all. And it wasn't like we could see it coming, and we knew it was there. We knew it was hard, and we were trying to put things into place. But, you know, 2 days before Christmas, my wife and I declared personal bankruptcy. And then we looked at our then 6-year-old son and said, "Son, we have to move. We have to move." And we ended up actually moving out of a nice 2,500 square foot house in Silverado and moved in with my sister-in-law and her family in their 3-bedroom condo. Wow. Like, that was probably the single most humbling experience of my life. It was really dark. Not only was I a failure as a business owner, I felt like I was a failure as a dad and a husband because now I can't support my family. There was moments where I wanted to put a gun in my mouth and pull the trigger. And that was hard. And I have to hand, you know, a really big thank you to my wife, because she kept me out of my head. Right. And that allowed me to back into coaching, which is kind of funny. And there's a whole story behind that. But, if you tune into my webinars, you hear the story pretty quick. But essentially it was, I put out 300 resumes looking for work, everything from the CEO to the AER, and driving a truck, and I couldn't find anything. And 2 coaching companies in the same week wanted to interview me. One was in Toronto, one was here in Calgary. So I went to work for the ones here in Calgary, taking the only job I could possibly find, and then realized that I'd found my passion.
Love it.
Like, that was so powerful to help for me to realize that everything that I went through in life, even including the bankruptcy, I can now use to help people not go through that. Right. Especially with COVID going on. I mean, like I just heard last week that the suicide rate in BC has doubled since COVID. Right. That's 4,000 to 8,000 suicides. That is a scary figure. How many business owners that had to close their doors have those thoughts? You know,
and it's not even just suicide. There's some people who don't have the balls to be able to pull the trigger or, you know, do something to themselves, but they're certainly living in this world of depression. So the suicide numbers are huge, but the mental illness side is even bigger.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's huge. You know, it's interesting. You talk about your journey, and it's almost like this divine intervention comes down. I could see the emotion in your face that somebody sent you, an angel, and someone sent you the path in which you should go, right? Yeah. So walk me through this path right now. So now you have your angel in your life. You fixed your alcoholism. Do you start to forgive yourself at some point in time and say, "Hey, look," because I could see that, you know, as entrepreneurs, as men, we tend to be harder on ourselves. Because you touched on this. You said, hey, look, I was a failure as a father, a failure as a husband, failure as a provider. When do you start to forgive yourself and say, hey, look, you know what? I'm human, right? And this happens. That's
right. And that's a hard thing to do. For me, working my program in sobriety, part of the steps where we walk ourselves through that. And I eventually forgive myself. I've wiped the slate clean, so to speak, in my world. And the only way I can really push that forward is to help others. Right. And that's where, this whole concept around giving back to the community became so big for me when I was in business, I felt like I was the only boat in the ocean, right? Just out there by myself, and I had to figure it all out on my own. And when I realized going through alcoholism and in my recovery, there's a group of supporters out there. They're cheering me on. They're there to listen, to hold space with me, right? That I didn't know existed. And then I made the connection between alcoholism and business in the fact that I have an extra big ego, right? One, because I'm an entrepreneur, and two, I got an extra helping because I'm an alcoholic and I can do it my way. So get the hell out of my way, right? And that's kind of how I started my first oil field business. I remember clear as a bell. I'd gone to a fairly wealthy uncle. In fact, he's wickedly wealthy, and asked him if I could borrow $100,000 to start my business. And he heard me out. He listened to me. He said, yeah, great idea, but it's too early. It's not going to work. And I hung up the phone and I said, yeah, right. Screw you. I'm going to do it anyway. And I did. I went out and did it, and I made it happen. We made millions of dollars over 10 years and then lost it. Right. And then went, talk about, I mean, it's like losing a child, right? That darkness you get into. When you realize that everything that we go through aren't failures, they're lessons that we can learn. That's when you can start to look back at it and forgive yourself. Forgive yourself that, you know, hey, I didn't know any better. Now I do. So now I make living amends. When I walk through the world and I realize that I'm screwing up, I realize I'm aware of my I call them defects. When I'm aware of my defect, I go, hey, that's not me. I'm changing that, and I'll stop right there and I'll fix it. Right? I'll tell somebody, hey, sorry, that's not how I'm normally. This is the way I should be. Right. Right. And I'll fix it right there. And then I allow myself to say, hey, that's not you. Right. I'm a new and improved version of me. People often ask, would I change? If I could go back and change anything, would I? And there's some things that I'd love to, because, you know, I caused a lot of pain. I completely destroyed relationships. But I know if I went back and changed that, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I'll be honest, man, I love who I am today. Good. You know what? That's the number one thing is self-love, right? Yeah. Because oftentimes we don't have that self-love, and we beat ourselves up, and, you know, as men, it's tough. It is. It's tough. When you like I'm an extra big guy, and I'm extra stubborn, and I can really beat myself up when I get on it. And when you realize that you can only change, and this is where I love the serenity prayer, right? Yeah. Right. You can only control one thing, and everything else you have to accept. And when you figure that part out, life becomes so much better. Right. So much better. And I don't want to spoil it for all your listeners, but you know what? The only thing you can change is you. Absolutely. That's it. You have to start to appreciate that you are the author of your own story. Right? Everyone has a story. Is it going to be a shitty story? Is it going to be a tragedy? Is it going to be a comedy? Whatever. It could be whatever you want it to be. And I love the fact that what I'm hearing is you start to become this architect, this author. You're like, hey, look, this happened. It's just a chapter in my life. It's not the entire chapter. There's one quote, I hope I don't butcher it, but they said, don't judge me on my story just because you walked in on a specific chapter, something along those lines, right? Like this isn't my story. This is my full story. Don't judge my full story based on the chapter you happen to be walking in, right? So someone walks into your life when you're an alcoholic, like, you know, Wes is an alcoholic. No, right? It's not full story. He's screwed, right? So you talk about this darkness, and you get out of the darkness. You have your wife supporting you. As I asked one of my guests the other time, I asked them, what is the biggest investment you as a person has invested in yourself?
And the answer, my belief is that, the best investment is find the right wife, right? Find the right. Some people have to go through multiple ones to find the right one. It sounds like you found the right one. So walk me through the importance of relationship. Because
so I think the quote you're looking for is behind every successful man is a strong woman.
or a woman just shaking her head. Like, what the hell just happened? So just touch on relationships. And the reason why I want you to touch on that is because business and anything we do in life is predicated on our ability to have a relationship with ourselves, our spouse, our business partners, our clients, whatever it might be. But aside from you knowing you, sometimes your wife knows you more than you.
Oh, sure.
Right. So just elaborate a little bit about your relationship. How did it foster?
Well, that's a cool story. I'd been divorced for almost a year, and my ex-wife I think she was on her third or fourth boyfriend at that time. And I go, like, what am I still doing sitting in the basement of my mom and dad's house? Cause that's where I was living at the time. And, so I started looking online because I didn't like to drink because I knew that drinking was just going to get me into trouble again. So, I mean, I'm still drinking wine at this point, but I'm trying to stay away from the places that get me into trouble. And, so I went looking online, and, I dated a Filipino girl, didn't know who Filipinos were, didn't have a clue.
Friendliest people in the world, man.
Friendliest people in the world. Is just really, really good looking girl in a picture. And I said, well, let's go on a date. And she says, yeah, sure. So I hooked up with her. That didn't last very long. I still had some anger issues, and in some of the trying to be honest with the relationship, she just bailed. She goes, no, I don't want nothing to do with this, because there was way too much baggage there. So she bailed on me. And the last thing she said, or one of the things that she'd mentioned, was there was another website that she was on. So I went looking for her on this website, trying to get her back. And that was when I found this girl. Okay. And she's an amazing woman. Her smile kept drawing me back. Like, I had 100 favorites on the wall, and I'm going, yeah, this one, and then, oh, but this one, something there. And so I reached out to her, and she was living in Calgary at the time. She just came over from the Philippines. I think she was only here like 2 months. Yeah. And
so you snatched her before anyone else can snatch her.
I did. We started talking. I sent her an email. She said, yeah. We started talking on September 11th, 2008, and we have not missed a night. Not missed a day where we didn't say hi to each other.
Love it.
First 2 weeks, we just did a Yahoo, like a Zoom back and forth. And I'm talking to my mom one day, a couple of weeks later, and we hadn't actually met in person yet. And I'm going, I think there's something wrong with me, Mom. I think my teeth I got an infection or something. She goes, why? And I go, well, my face is sore. She goes, what do you mean your face is sore? And I go, yeah, it's like it hurts right up in here, right around my cheeks and stuff. And she goes, well, what have you been doing? I said, nothing. I've been just talking to Pinky. And then she laughed, and she goes, well, it's silly. You've been smiling. You haven't smiled like that in years. Yeah. And little did I know, it's exactly what it was. We went out for my birthday date, and I sealed the deal.
Nice.
We've been I proposed a year later at the Calgary Tower, up on the rotating restaurant, and then we got married just about a year to the date after that.
Love it.
And it's the struggle that I had in that entire relationship was trust. And there was a date where she'd gone on a double date with her sister, and I didn't know, because I didn't know Filipino culture. Yep. It wasn't a
chaperone.
Double date. She was chaperoning, right? But it was, I thought it was a double date, and I'm going, what are you doing? You're going on a date, you're dating me. And I was just jealous as all get out, right? Yeah. We got into a big fight, and and my mom is a great, great mentor for me. And I talked to her about it, and she goes, well, would Pinky ever do something on purpose to hurt you? And I go, well, no. And she goes, well, then you just have to trust her. Right. And so I made a decision that night to trust her, and that changed everything. Just like that jealousy just disappeared, and we have had the strongest relationship ever. We've been married, this October was 10 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you. And we're more in love 10 years later than I thought we could be. In the first year of marriage. It's been that good. We've got a little guy, 9-year-old Ezekiel. Right. He's just
that's a strong name. I love it.
He's just a blast. Yeah. And it's I get a second chance with him that I threw away because of my alcoholism with my other kids, and I'm not going to miss it. I'm taking advantage of that moment. I'm trying to rekindle that relationship with my older boys, but you know, they're in their 20s, and, you know, dad's an alcoholic and we don't want much to do with them. So I get it. But I want to make sure I leave the door open, that I'm there for them. If they need something, you know, hey, just got a call and I'll be there, man.
Right.
And that's really all we can do in trying to repair those relationships. And that's where I've forgiven myself, right? Because I used to look at myself and I go, man, you screwed up so bad. Like to not have your kids want to talk to you is hard, right? And to be able to just open your door and forgive yourself that, hey, that was then, now is now. I can't worry about back in the past. I can only worry about today and going forward. So today I'm going to be the best guy I can be. I'll be the best father I can be. And I leave the door open, and I hope at some point they come around.
How are you feeling right now?
There's a lot of emotion.
Because I see a lot of emotion.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotion.
And coming from, I've known you for many years, and you know you're that strong person that I view. So to see this emotion it's pretty raw. What's going through your head? It
is. There's a lot of pain there still, right? One of the things, you know, I grew up in a household where cowboys don't cry. My dad was an old rodeo cowboy. He did rodeo down in the Cheyenne, and I'm sure he did some in Calgary too. I don't know much about that part of it, but I do know that he ran away from home when he was 16, and he did the Cheyenne Frontier Days in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And we just grew up in that household where men don't cry. And so when my granddad passed away when I was 12, that was probably the last time I cried. I just pushed all that pain and emotion down because I didn't know how to deal with it, so I just pushed it down. Not very long after that, I got into drugs and alcohol to medicate, right? And going into ARC with my daughter, the way that program works is they separate the child from the family, and they treat the child, and then they treat the family for the co-addiction. And going through my treatment, some of that emotion started coming out. And then, you know, after about 3 months, you know, 3 months of getting a men's group and go to say something that I thought was profound, and it all comes out in blubbering tears you don't know what to do with it, right? But once I got all that stuff out, then I could start to go, oh, that's what it means.
Yeah, that's when the healing starts to begin, right?
That's right.
And you know, it's funny because without growth, and I know you hit the gym pretty hard, you got to tear those muscles, right, to grow. Or like what David Goggins, you know, you got to put callus over that. You got to toughen up, right? You're coming from a military guy, you get that. You got to toughen up. But I hear you that you can't really cry. You're not supposed to cry. As men, you're not supposed to, right? But
and that's a stereotype, right? We're supposed to be the stoic, you know, men. And I found the way I am now, I wear my emotions on my sleeve. Right? My heart is on my sleeve. I'll be sitting there watching a movie with my son, and he'll look over at me and he goes, "Dad, you're crying." and I go, yeah, because that movie gets me, right?
Yeah.
I cannot watch Marley and Me, a movie about the dogs, because I had to put my dog down in 2013, and he saved my life, that dog. Wow. And it's for me to watch Marley and Me. Like, I get what they're going through, right? And I can't watch it.
Yeah.
Not without being a blubbering puddle at the end of it, right?
See, you know, you're more advanced than me, because I'm like, hey, who's cutting onions here? What the heck, man? I thought we were watching a movie. Well, I didn't know we were cooking here. I still try to hide that.
And why? Why hide your emotions, right? One of the big things that I've found in getting those emotions out there, right? I actually feel now. Right. Now, when I was in my alcoholism, I only had two emotions: anger or fear. Right? Very primal, because any emotion you had, it comes out in anger, right? When I started getting rid of all those, started dumping them all on the floor and sorting through them, you know, I felt so out of control, and I'm a control freak, and I want to be able to control stuff because I need to control it to make it go the way I want, and that's a typical alcoholic behavior. Page 84 in the big book describes me to a T, the actor. And once I realized, and a good friend of mine told me, he said, quit trying to juggle all the balls. He said, just let them all fall. And he said, once they've stopped bouncing, he said, pick up the one that's most important to you. And when I came to the realization, and I, you know, not physically did that, but emotionally did that, and I fell to my knees and I picked up the one that was most important to me, which is my family. And I realized that's the moment that I could forgive myself, right?
You know, when you start to live for someone else or a greater purpose, something greater than ourselves, right?
Greater purpose.
Because we tend to, I was talking to my wife earlier today, and I said, you know, we tend to focus on, as human beings, naturally, we love ourselves more than we love other people, naturally. Yet, we're so concerned with the love of other people towards us, right? And we don't forget, we forget that, right? Yeah. So it's profound that you're able to really go through a point in time in your life where, you know, you're making millions of dollars, you drop down to rock bottom. And I'll be honest with you, rock bottom isn't always bad. It isn't always that bad. Sometimes it's a good starting point, right?
It is a good starting point. I mean, it
can't go any further right? At that time. But in hindsight, you're like, you know, it's not a bad starting point. You can't go any further.
Well, I have to give kudos out to my wife's sister. You know, having the heart to open up her house to allow us to come in.
Right. What's her name?
Her name is MJ.
Oh, okay. Maybe you could tell her thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Awesome. We love you so much.
You know, sometimes we don't get a chance to say thank you to the people who've been there. We take that for granted.
Yeah, we do.
Right.
And I've thanked her for that many times. But it's still emotional because when you, for me, you know, now that my emotions are starting to flow, I feel pain. I feel love. I feel love at such a deep level now. It's amazing. I feel joy. I feel sadness, right? I feel a full gamut of emotions that I can sit and experience and ask myself, okay, why am I feeling this? Where is it coming from?
Right.
And think about it instead of just, you know, anger, instant anger, right? And because of that, my life, my relationships with my family, my wife, my mom and dad, my kids, my grandkids. I mean, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. Is just like, she is so awesome. Yeah. And that's probably the highlight of repairing those relationships, right? Is I have grandkids that I can play with now. And my granddaughter comes up, Grandpa, I love you. You're the best.
That must warm your heart, right?
Oh, it does. It breaks my heart, man. It's just I'm instant tears because it's so powerful.
Right.
I didn't know I could love that much. Right. And now that I feel the emotions, I'm not going to stuff them down ever again. Right. Not a chance.
It sounds like you've moved from, you know, as entrepreneurs, first of all, we tend to have to be stoic because we need to make the very difficult decisions like we have to put our emotion aside to make a very difficult decision. As a military guy, you also have to be a stoic because I'm not saying robotic, right? But you have to be able to control your emotions. What I'm hearing is now you're a heck of a lot more human.
Well, I'm human. I don't let my emotions control me.
Yeah.
I feel them.
Yes.
I go, where are these coming from? And then I make a decision. You know, we're human. We all make decisions based on emotion, and we try to use logic to justify it later, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, if you can sit down and understand how that emotion is going to sway your decision, you can probably make the better decision. Right. But if you don't know what you're feeling, you're never going to get there. Right.
You know, and this acceptance of emotion is really just connection, right? It's connecting with a bunch of different things.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to take a step back because I want to give your wife Pinky a little bit of time here, right? and the reason being is because she sounds like such an important person in your life, right?
She is.
And she's, again, describe her as an angel in your life. In the world that we currently live in right now, it's a pretty divisive world. You go down in the South, you see, you know, racial tension, regardless.
Yeah.
Now you are a mixed marriage, right? She's Filipina, you know, you're Caucasian, you get together. How, like, describe that back then. Has that changed now? So,
you know, I look at how I was raised, and skin color never bothered me, right? You know, I remember back when we played Cowboys and Indians, I always played the Indian because I love playing with bows and arrows, right? And I thought it was really cool to wear feathers and buckskins and stuff. So skin color was never an issue. So when I seen Pinky, I went, man, that's exotic. I need that in my life, right? And but I did have some reservations because mom and dad not so much.
Different generation.
Absolutely. And I remember asking mom and dad, I said, you know, are you guys have any concerns about me getting married to Pinky? And she goes, well, why do you say that? And I go, well, because the conversation around the house isn't always about, yeah, everything's good and rosy. It's, you know, there's a lot of racism going on here. And what was really cool is when I brought that up and I brought Pinky into our lives, I started to see that racism disappear in the family, which was really cool. Mom and dad are, you know, I don't think they ever meant to be racist, but some experiences that they had in their past, you know, tainted their view on the world. Today, you know, I live in the human race, right? Pinky and I are both humans. And, you know, I believe because she has a darker skin color, she's a very beautiful woman. Right. Right. And it's very, very attractive to me. But at the end of the day, she's still my wife.
Love it.
Right. And we support each other in what we do. We focus on our goals and we support each other no matter what goes down. And that relationship is built on trust. Right. And that started when earlier I said, you know, I had to make the decision to trust her. And slowly over time, she's allowed herself to trust me, you know, and I'll be honest, when I was working on a pipeline about 4 years ago, I thought there was another man in the world because she had gotten really cold and stuff. And I didn't realize that was her way of dealing with being alone, right? She just clamped down, focused, like she's a very focused woman. Right. She's a competitive bodybuilder. She is serious when it comes to her meal times, right? So she's very focused, very diligent. And when I was gone away from home, and I was gone for about 5 or 6 months, and her whole world was just her revolving around her supporting her and Zeke and looking after everybody. And so it just got really, really close. She built a pretty big brick wall around her heart. I spent 4 hours one night, just, you know, little tiny pokes all night long. And somewhere about 1 o'clock in the morning, it came out that she missed her mom. And, you know, her mom's back in the Philippines. Her mom's getting up there in age. And I realized that she had built this brick wall around her so that she wouldn't feel emotion, just like I'd done all my entire life. Right. So I coached her through how to pull those bricks down. And slowly, right, every once in a while I catch her trying to put them back up, but slowly she's brought them and broke them down. And now, because of that, we have this really open relationship. We know how to communicate. And if we don't get the communication right, we keep trying. And I'll tell you a little story, and this is kind of a cool story. And I don't remember exactly what the deal was, but we were sitting at the dinner table, and I was trying to get my way, right? My alcoholism was starting to sneak back in. And we got into this big fight, and Zeke broke out, and he was crying. He thought it was his fault, and I got up, and I stormed away. And I realized that was not how I wanted that conversation to go at all. So I came back half an hour later, and I learned this from listening to a Tony Robbins tape. And he was talking about how him and Gorbachev had flown across the country, and he got to ask Gorbachev, when did he know he was going to be able to work with Reagan and break the wall down? And he said, well, we were having a discussion in the White House, and I was teaching him all about the pros of communism, and he was trying to tell me all the pros of capitalism, and we're both red-faced and we're screaming at each other. And finally Ronald Reagan stood up and he goes, this isn't working, and he walked away. Right. He got to his desk and he turned around and he goes, hi, my name's Ronald. Can we start again?
Love it. And
he said, right then I knew I could work with Ronald. And it made me realize I could do the same thing with my wife. So I went back 30 minutes later and I said, hun, that didn't go the way I want. Can we try this again? And we sat down, we had a much better conversation. I still didn't get the way I wanted, but we understood each other. We got through that piece. Right. And so now I realize that just because you fail in the first attempt at conversation or the first communication doesn't mean you quit. You go back until you learn how to communicate with other persons so they understand exactly what you're trying to convey to them. Right? And that's where we have this big failure in communication. My daughter phoned me one day and she goes, Dad, my best friend broke up with me, blah, blah. And I go, what happened? And she goes, well, we were texting back and forth. And I go, stop right there. Yeah. And she goes, what?
You lose tone, right?
And she goes, what? And I go, well, think of it. On the best of days, words we use in our communication is 7% of our communication. On the best of days. Your texting is probably only 3%. So I'm pretty sure she took something sideways. Did you phone her? No. Did you go see her? No. Go do that. You probably didn't break up.
Yeah. You know, I think that message alone resonates, and it should. If you guys are watching this right now, what Wes just said is profound, because we need that. We need to have that humility to take a step back, humility to say, hey, this is not working out. And it's not like we're giving up right away. Just kind of quickly pressing the reset button, because the worst thing that could happen is you say something you're going to regret for the rest of your life. And I've been there, man. I've said some things, and I'm like, to this day, I regret it, because as much as I've been forgiven by my spouse or whoever I hurt at the time, it's still there.
Oh, yeah. It
hurts, right? So I love the fact that you had that humility to be able to walk away, press the reset button, come back, and start all over, right? And I think life is all about starting all over. It is.
I mean, it's forgiving ourselves for failing, first of all, and going, okay, what went wrong? How can I improve it?
Right.
And then go back and try again. And that's exactly what it is. Life is like that. I mean, and I go back to the analogy of the butterfly in the cocoon. If we help the butterfly get out of the cocoon, they don't make it. They die. Yeah. They need that struggle. And us as humans, we need that struggle to become who we are, to reveal the character. When I'm trying to remember, there was a quote somebody asked Michelangelo about, how he knew how to carve David, right? And he goes, I didn't carve him. I just set him free. Right?
Wow.
And that's the same with the humans beings, is as we struggle, it builds our character.
Right.
Right. And if we keep making the same mistake over and over and over, I used to tell my kids, if you're going to make the mistake more than twice, sit down and take notes. Right. The horse is going to kick you.
Yeah.
Take notes. Yeah. Right. And for the longest time, they probably didn't get that. But now my third oldest daughter, she goes, Dad, I get what you mean now.
Right. And I hear what you're saying. It's like, these mistakes are not, they're not everything, right? They're lessons. Yeah. And I always tell people the acronym FAIL, F-A-I-L, stands for found another important lesson. Right?
Absolutely.
So if you're failing constantly, it means you're doing something. It means you're trying, right? Because you could not do anything and not fail. So you have to be willing to fail.
Well, we have to reframe it in our minds, right?
Right.
And that's, if you haven't heard the story about the founder of Spanx, you got to listen to her story, right? Because she talks about how her dad would ask her when they come home from school, he goes, what did you fail at today?
Yeah.
And she goes, I tried out for the basketball team and I didn't make it. Right. And I go, and it's all about reframing how we look at failure. And you can look at failure as it's a bad thing, and you can stay and wallow in that mud, or you can look at it as, hey, I learned a lesson here. What do I need to do to improve? And that's one of the things I teach my clients. It's a term I learned it in the Army years ago. But there was a good book called Flawless Execution, where a fighter pilot teaches this to his clients as well. And it's simple. It's a circular pattern. You make your plan, you brief your team, you execute it, and the most important spot is debrief it.
Right.
Figure out what went wrong, what you need to do to improve, and then replan, and then do it again. And it allows you to create that constant improvement circle,
right,
so that you learn from everything you fail at. Most people don't do the debrief. Right, they fail to do that because they go, "Oh, we failed." Right.
And I think it's so important just to have that moment of self-reflection.
Oh yeah.
To be like, hey, like I did this wrong. I could become better. And at the end of the day, when you look at it, you just have to have that idea of that there's hope, that it could get better. It could be shitty right now, right? But let me take this situation. So let me ask you another question here, because this is a great segue into failure. Can you tell me another time when you had no idea what you were doing, and how did you crawl your way out of it?
That's most of the time. My personality is I don't need details. We'll just figure it out on the way, right?
Right.
Let's get started.
Spoken like a true entrepreneur, right? You jump off of a cliff and build a plane on your way down. So
I mean, it's a good question. Probably the biggest thing where I didn't know what I was doing was in recovery. Right. I was still unemployed, still didn't have work. And that's the part where my wife, I think, was my rock, right? Because she was the only one that was bringing in any money. She's the only one who could get a job. And going through that dark space, not knowing what was going to be on the outside, that's that's really when I found that true inner peace, is going through the struggle of not trying to control everything. Right. That's where my friend Lauren told me to drop all the balls. Right. Just quit juggling them. Stop trying to do everything. Stop trying to control everything. Just let it go. It's not going to crash. And my psyche is saying, well, if I let it go, it is going to crash.
Right.
And then what am I going to do? It's going to be really fucked up.
Yeah.
Pardon my language. But I mean, and I didn't want that to happen, because I mean, look at what just happened to me.
Yeah.
Like 3 months ago, I crashed my whole business. So going through there and not knowing what's on the other side, but just having enough faith that it'll be okay,
right,
is powerful. And learning to be able to rely on a higher power, or you know, whatever you want to call your deity, God, Jesus, whoever that is. You know, for me, it's Jesus, because I am a Catholic. But you got to be able to rely on something that's bigger than you, that things will be okay.
Right. Your journey is such an interesting one, because you could see the evolution, and I'm sure you're familiar with the hero's journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You are so familiar. You go through that, and now you're turning around and bringing back hope for other people who are going through it. And I think that's kind of what your motto is. Looking back on your life, do you wish, if you could, like, what bit of knowledge or advice do you wish someone told you before you started this journey?
You know, I wish I'd never been introduced to pornography and alcohol, right? Because I look back, those two pieces destroyed more relationships in my life than I could ever imagine.
Wow.
And what's scary is, with the internet today, you know, my son's been exposed to it at 9 years old. And I went, like, how did this happen? Right? Who told you to go there? How'd you figure that out? Like, what, you know? And I had a really good talk with him, and it was about my life, right? Because I was exposed to pornography when I was, I don't even remember how old I was, 7 or 8 years old. And ever since then, it's had that hold on my life that really is not a good place, right? It makes an individual think of you know, the opposite sex in a very negative connotation, and that's what destroys relationships, right? And for my wife and I, like, when we first got together, we told each other we were not going to have sex.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
And
so you were playing the card, the celibacy card, for a while.
We played the celibacy card, and I said, you know, hey, what
if you don't mind me asking, how long was this card for?
It lasted about 4 months.
4 months.
4 months of intense teasing.
And then a massive explosion happens, and the neighbor's like, what's going on in that house? Right? People are screaming. Right? It's just Wes and Pinky. They're having fun.
It was all good. It's all good. We were in a hotel room anyway.
So strangers.
Strangers. But it was, you know, I wanted the relationship to be built on something more than sex, because my first relationship, that was what started it. And when I look back at it, you know, the sex was great, but we didn't have a relationship, and we were never able to build a relationship. Right. So I said, I don't want to make that mistake again. Let's build a relationship first, because as we get older, the sex is going to disappear. And then what? And for the longest time, just before we went bankrupt, my wife and I had a picture on her fridge, and it was, people look at it and go, like, what the hell? And it was two old people, butt naked, facing the ocean, arms around each other, standing on a beach, right? Beautiful. Wrinkles and everything. It was just ugly. But that was...
ugly yet beautiful.
It was. That was the picture that Pinky and I want to grow into.
So that's a great segue into, where do you see, like, just imagine life after all of this. You've gone through a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Where's it going to be in 20 years from now?
20 years?
Yeah, let's say 20.
Well, first of all, I'll still be coaching. I hope to be running one of the largest coaching firms in the world.
Okay. Put that energy out in the universe. It's going to happen.
So my goal right now, and it was brought into existence, my vision has always been the same, but creating world abundance through business success came into being through a conversation I had with a gentleman on LinkedIn. And he asked me, well, what are you doing? And I said, I'm creating world abundance. And he goes, awesome. And he sent me back CWA. And I went, there's a perfect logo. And so that kind of set the tone. And 2 months ago, I started looking into growing my coaching firm. We've recently just brought on 3 new coaches to help create that world of abundance. I can only do so much, right? I can only coach 10 clients, 12 at the max, and still have a reasonable life. If I did 15, things would be falling off the table. And I'm going like, the only way for me to create an impact is to be able to duplicate myself. Mm-hmm. So bringing some coaches on, my goal is by the end of 2021 is to have 25 coaches on my team. That leads to an impact of 250 business owners that we've just changed their lives.
Wonderful.
Right now, today, the number one destroyer of marriages is not lack of love. It's a lack of money. Mm-hmm. Right. And so as a business coach, I can have a difference in that life by changing the business around, changing the mindset of the business owner that creates a trickle down effect into his world. Yeah. And saves his marriage.
It's interesting because as entrepreneurs, the initial drive to get into entrepreneurship is money, right?
Absolutely.
And it's also the biggest destructor of the relationship around you, right? So let's say we can remove money from the equation. If money was not an object, what do you think you'd be doing?
I'd still be coaching.
Love it. You'd still be helping.
Absolutely, man.
So you love what you do.
The ability to give back to a business owner, to see the light bulb come on in his mind, to give him hope that the reason he started his business, or she, let's not he or she started their business, a few years ago, decades ago, whatever, that, they ended up buying themselves a job and working their fingernails to the bone, doing 60, 70, 80, 90 hours a week and not seeing any light. When I come in and I can show them a way to build their business so that they can create that lifestyle that they originally thought they could have, they go, I can still do that. Right. I'm a giver of hope. And that's why I would do this for free. Because if you can breed hope back into somebody that are out of hope, you can give them another chance at life. And that to me is there's no better gift that I can give to anyone than that. And I do that. That's
such a powerful why, right? Because there's this whole movement of finding your why. It sounds like you found it, right? And,
oh yeah.
And it's compelling. The great thing about your story is that there are so many fake gurus out there. You and I had this conversation. So many guys who are out there, they're 21 years old. Here, you can do this. I remember I was in university and I took entrepreneurship. And I was listening to this guy, my professor, and then I asked him, I said, how many businesses have you owned yourself? He says, none. I said, so you're teaching us how to run businesses and you've never owned a business yourself. Yeah. So there's a lot of these fake gurus and ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this, one of the great things that we have here with Wes is that he's gone through this, and to learn from other people's mistakes is the fastest way for accelerated learning, right?
Absolutely it is.
It's just, you don't need to go through it yourself.
No, right? You look at the internet and everybody's out there is looking for that get rich quick, find life hack, find the business hack, whatever it is. At the end of the day, if you really want to grow your business successfully, get a coach, because that is the hack.
Absolutely.
That's your hack, because they will get you there faster, quicker, and better than you could do on your own.
And we'll touch on that right at the end, how to connect with you, because I think it's important for our listeners and or anyone who's watching this to take this message, because this could be a 2-hour conversation, Wes. Like, this is great.
We're just getting started.
I know, just warming up. Some of the conversations we've had is not only just talking about coaching and mentorship, but books.
Absolutely.
Right? So, in 2 minutes, what are you currently reading right now?
So currently, I'd have to look at my phone. I'm reading 4 books right now, but
overachiever. Look at this guy, 4 books.
I'm listening to, for about the 6th time now, Never Split the Difference, which is a book on negotiation. I'm listening to Russell Brunson's Traffic Secrets, and I'm also listening to Grant Cardone's success booklet, millionaire booklet.
It's a great book.
And the reason I listen to that one about every 3 months or so, just to give me that little shot in the arm, because it's an hour-long book, and I can get that going. It's either that or Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. A couple of short books.
I listen to that at the gym all the time.
Yeah.
It's only an hour. Grant Cardone's it's great. Quick hour, because you always find something new in that book.
Oh, you do.
Just like watching a movie, you're like, we didn't notice that. That's good.
One of the things that inspired me about Grant Cardone, and where I really got focused on bringing coaches onto my team, is he was talking about being in one of those charity galas where we're trying to raise funds for a charity, and there's a whole bunch of people in there. They're all good intention, but they're all tapped out, and only one guy in the room came up with the money that they needed, and I'm going, well, that's the same thing with happened with ARC this year, because ARC is totally funded by donations, and they're not government funded at all. So this year they didn't have their big gala or whatever you want to call it, and so they fell short. And I'm thinking, what if we had an impact in all the business owners that could have been in the room, 10x their business over the next 24 months? What would change in our communities if they could all of a sudden give?
Right. I love the fact that you even just talked about that change, because that goes back to the very first comment was be the change you want to see in the world.
Absolutely.
Gandhi, right?
Yep.
And oftentimes people want to be this change. They just don't have the mechanism to do it, right? They don't have the vehicle. And I think you found the vehicle through your coaching, through your businesses, and now you're going to try to connect with the business community to be able to help more businesses.
Absolutely.
One thing that is compelling that I love about your story is this story of transformation. I really see just this up and down roller coaster. And when you're telling me about this story about you just slowly putting your hand up and up, it tells us that you're not alone. Whether you're going through alcoholism, relationship problems, you might, as an entrepreneur, failing business, there are people out there. And I love the fact that you're trying to be, you're vulnerable enough to say, hey, look, I was there. You're never alone, right? And there's opportunities for transformation. But let's quickly talk about transformation here. I found this picture of you. And so I just want you to describe. When was this?
Oh my goodness!
When was this picture?
That was I think 2007. My parents had just moved in with me and my ex-wife, and I was just in the process of launching my oil field service business.
If I saw you now and I saw that man, I wouldn't even recognize. I looked, I said, is that you? Really? Yeah, a good head of hair there, though. I have
no idea where you found that.
But the reason why I want to talk about transformation is we moved from this guy to this guy. Look at that.
Oh, my.
Right? So I love this picture. Tell me about what's going on, because I love the fact that there's some action there. You're dropping the magazine.
Oh, yeah.
What are you doing there? And what bad guy are you killing?
So that was 2014. I think we were doing really well in the business, and I had some extra cash, and my wife had decided that she wanted to buy me a really special birthday present one year, and she bought me a pistol. And I went, freaking awesome.
Nice.
And so I went and bought the pistol, went to the range, pounded back a few rounds, and that got pretty boring in a hurry. And one of the guys at the range goes, well, have you ever shot IPSC? And he goes, I go, what?
Yeah.
And he goes, IPSC, yeah. We call it running and gunning. And I go, no, but I'm in.
Yeah.
And, about $500 later in a weekend, I had my black badge course behind my belt, and we were going out and we were doing competitive pistol shooting. My wife and I. Wow. She was doing it as well. It was really cool. We had a lot of fun. We traveled pretty much all over Alberta I think there was, the way IPSC worked back then, that was 2014, 2015. There's like 16 ranges that we could use. Today they've opened up a bunch more. It's way more fun. I haven't got back into it. I have found a new passion. My new passion is off-road racing. It's almost
imagine if you could create a hybrid. You off-road racing and shooting things along. I looked at him like, does Wes know something that we don't know? Is this like apocalypse zombie training?
Well, right? it could be. You never know. But, but at the end of the day, we have to live our life. If we don't live in today, if we don't live today to the most, we will miss some of the most important things in our life.
Moments, memorable.
Those moments that we needed to create, we missed.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought, Wes, because got one more thing I want you to explain. And tell me about this moment.
Oh.
And what's going through your mind there, because you talked about moments, and I saw that. I almost got teared up.
I am teared up right now. To me, that is a very special moment. That was me reading my first story to my son, my youngest son. And he just loved every minute of it. And my wife took that picture thinking, here's a guy who had destroyed all the relationships in his life. thought he was useless and worthless, wanted to stick a gun in his mouth. And now he's at this point where, I mean, and sticking a gun in my mouth wasn't a one-time thing. It was after I lost my first marriage and my first family, I wanted to do the same thing. But I'd come through all of that trial and tribulation to a point where I can be in the moment like that with my son and create a moment.
Love it.
It's special. It's special. I've created that memory, and it's powerful. And I mean, it's almost as powerful as me delivering my last daughter in the van. We never made it to the hospital. That's a whole other story.
Man, you got a lot of these great experiences, but I saw that, and first thing I thought to my mind was the world needs better fathers.
Absolutely.
We need better men, we need fathers, we need mentors. And one message that I would give out to all the men out there is just be better men, be better fathers, be better friends.
I have a story to share, and this comes back to the impact that we have as parents, as fathers, that we don't know we're doing when we're in the moment. If you have the integrity and you're walking the walk, your kids are listening, they're watching, right? I was having a down day last week. And I was just kind of struggling with it. And my son, he plops himself down on the couch beside me and stretched straight out. And he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, Dad, are you reaching your goals? How many calls did you make today, Dad?" Right? Holding me to the fire. Right?
Yeah.
And
accountability partner right there.
Right there. And it made me realize that he was listening in on my calls that I make to my clients. Right? He's listening in when I'm coaching my clients. And so he realized I was down, and he said, "Dad needs some coaching." So he jumped in there and he threw that out. And I'm emotional right now about it today because I've been able to create a space for my son to grow that I didn't give my other kids that space. But I think about where his trajectory is going to take him, because he's already thinking like that at 9 years old. Yeah. I'm thinking, where's he going to be when he's 18? Where's he going to be when is he going to be the next Leonardo da Vinci, right? Inventing stuff before he makes it to 30? Right. Who knows, right? But we need to give our kids that space, and that's where this book comes in, right? And I want to talk about this. I don't know if you're ready for this.
No, well, we could talk about it. We're running a little bit short, but
this book,
I love that book, by the way.
This book is very powerful. If you haven't read it, read it. Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil. He talks about our school system and how our school system is old and archaic, and we're creating zombies instead of children, right? We're telling them what to think, not how to think. And so it inspired me to I'm working on another project, and I won't go into the details, but it's about helping our kids learn, helping them to learn how to creative think and critical think, and teach them about money, teach them about life skills. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to do with my son, is give him that space so he can grow and become the next Leonardo da Vinci, because he's got that opportunity to learn what he wants to learn, right? He's a book magnet. He loves to learn stuff. So why are we punishing our kids for learning? Why not? Why not? Hey, no, you can't learn that. You have to learn this. No, learn this. Go for it, buddy. And when you're done, I got more. Right? And he's turned into, he's creative. He's a critical thinker. And I don't know if it was because I gave him the space to do it, or I just was aware enough that I needed to do it. But he's going there, and his future is wide open. The only sad part about that whole story is I wish I could have been able to do that for my other kids, right? And that part hurts me, because I just don't. They're going to be late bloomers. Let's call it. They're going to be late bloomers.
Right. Well, going back to that point is like that's an earlier chapter in your life. The story's not written yet, fully written, right?
No,
so
right.
It could be. Could be later on in the chapters of your life, and that'd be amazing.
I got 40 more years to go.
That's it, man. That's
40 more. I'm just getting started.
You know what? Let's say in the next 5 years, what if you get this invoice from your son just saying, "Hey, do you remember I coached you? I forgot to charge you." Right? It's like, holy crap, there's interest. Right. Wes, this has been an amazing conversation. I've loved the entire experience. We are now entering a stage of what I call the rise round. Right? The rise round is handful of questions. I'm going to pepper them out to you. You try to answer them as fast as you can with your instincts. And, you know, this is just something
The hot seat.
This is the hot seat, but I know that the audience out there they want to know. These are the ones. These are the pressing questions. And then after we'll wrap it up. So are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right, cool.
Fire away.
All right, 3, 2, 1, let's go. First question. As a military man, if you could be or create a G.I. Joe action figure about yourself, who would you be?
Oh yeah, it'd be G.I. Joe for sure. I played with him when I was a kid.
the original G.I. Joe.
The original.
All right.
The Kung Fu grip.
Spoken like an alpha male, right? Okay. You seem to really want to have change in the world and help others. If you're a superhero, what would your superhero power be?
Oh, that's a good one. Man, I think it would be Mother Teresa.
Okay. But what would the power be?
That power. Love.
Powerful. Yep. Most powerful. Smith & Wesson 44 caliber revolver or Remington M24 sniper rifle. Which one do you pick up?
Oh, both.
No, you got to pick up one, man. You can't go Dirty Harry and be sniping because it's close range or far away.
Yeah,
What are you?
You know what? My son laughs at me when we play Halo together because I go in bashing. I have learned, though, if you stay back and you snipe, you live longer.
That's true. I liked Halo too because I would use the pistol and it's just one headshot. Right?
Yeah.
So what's the answer? Sniper?
It's going to be a sniper.
Ah, okay.
Live
All right.
longer.
Live longer. Okay. You know, it's interesting because at one time earlier this year, I thought the world was falling apart with COVID. I was like, holy shit, we're going to have zombies. Like this is the apocalypse. So imagine there's an apocalypse, zombie apocalypse. You and your family have to escape from Calgary. You have one weapon to take. What is it?
My shotgun.
Oh, you're going for a spread. Like the easy. Right?
Just close range, one shot, one kill.
Okay.
Right?
I would go for a sword because you never run out of bullets.
Oh, yeah, true.
A sword.
But
Okay.
I have a big buttstock on the shotgun.
Right. You know what? You're almost late here because your wife is at a fitness competition.
That's right.
And if you've seen Pinky, she is ripped. She looks like a superhero, actually. She has the body of a superhero.
That's right.
So between you and I and the four walls here, can she kick your ass?
Oh, yeah. In the gym, pound for pound, she outlifts me.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Look at that.
She weighs 98 pounds, and
Yeah.
she will outlift me pound for pound.
Pound for pound, she can kick your ass. Okay.
I weigh 250. I can deadlift just over 400. She's weighs 100. She'll deadlift 200, no problem.
Oh, wow. Beast mode.
Yeah,
Okay.
beast mode, yeah.
You know, I noticed on your social media you've been hiking a lot too, which
Yeah.
is really cool.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
let's say you're hiking alone and by yourself and you see Bigfoot. What do you do?
I'd invite him for tea.
Because some people be like, hey, look, I saw a Bigfoot. Now you come across as crazy, or you just keep that moment to yourself.
Yeah, I'd probably keep it to myself because, you know, they've been living, if they're real, they've been living there for that many years.
Just leave them alone.
Leave them alone.
All right, I like that. You know, and I'm sure you've heard this before. I've told you this before, like months ago, that you have a really good radio voice. You know that, right? You got a great radio voice. Okay. Who do you think has more of a manular radio voice? You, Sylvester Stallone, or Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Well, definitely not Arnold.
Hey, you know, I heard him speak in Edmonton. He was fantastic for a
Was
full
he?
hour. He was great, man.
Right on.
There's something endearing about that accent.
Right on.
And he had a chance to get rid of it. He never got rid of it.
No, that's true. I always remind me of Terminator. I'll be back. Myself, I think I'm better than Sylvester.
Okay. It's 3 different voices. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
3
I like
different
the
voices.
confidence.
Yeah.
All right. So if your next iteration on life, maybe you could be a voiceover actor.
No.
Okay. So you're married to Pinky. She's a Filipina. What is one amazing thing that you love about the Filipino culture? And remember, this is going to be broadcasted in the Philippines. So be
Oh,
nice.
yes. It's absolutely the people. The people
good.
are amazing.
Okay.
They're so friendly, so open to just be part of who you are. Right. When we went over to the Philippines when Zeke was a little guy, we had people coming up. Oh, is it good? So cute, cutie. And they'd take him and they'd be off walking down the mall with our baby. And I'm going, who just kidnapped our kid?
Do you know any words in Filipino?
My wife is a terrible teacher, but I do know enough to get me in trouble.
Okay, we'll just leave it at that. You know, earlier on in the conversation, there was a serious moment about alcoholism. So I want to ask you if you could give some advice to someone who's struggling through alcoholism. What advice would you give them?
reach out. We can open the door for you. Reach out to AA. It's not the only program, but it's a program that worked well for me. Reach out. All you got to do is go Google AA, and there's somewhere in the city, there's a meeting going on right now. And what's good about the meetings is you can walk in and you can listen, right? It's like a smorgasbord, right? Listen to what's there. If you get something that's useful, use it, but keep going back. And at some point, the miracle will happen.
Awesome. Love that word, miracle. It's going to happen. Why do you think men are not living up to their full potential?
Fear. Fear.
Fear of not being enough?
Just fear. Fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear I'm not good enough, just fear, right? And the worst part about fear is it's fake. It's false evidence appearing real.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I learned in recovery is you can run in fear, right? Which is fuck everything and run, or face everything and recover.
Love it, man.
And when you face everything and recover, what I learned is that big mountain of fear that I was so scared of, when I turned to face it, turned into a little tiny mouse, right? It wasn't a big monster.
So if you have 60 seconds with your 15-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Wow. Here's a winning lottery ticket.
Going back to the money. It solves all the problems.
Here's a winning lottery ticket, and stop drinking, right? Just
at 15 years old?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just tell them, hey, don't drink. Don't pick up a... Okay.
Don't do it. Because it ruined so much of what could have happened, right? But I know that's not possible, and I don't even know if I would want to do that, because who I am today, I really like. I read a book, and this is powerful, goes back to attitude, is Ray L. Kelly wrote the book, and it's titled, Your Life Sinks or Soars, the Choice is Yours.
Love it.
And it's about choice.
Last, we're going to wrap it up quickly. In one word, how are you feeling right now?
Stoked.
Love it, brother. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Right on, man.
So how can people connect with you? What are you currently working on that people can find you?
Absolutely.
What's exciting in your life?
So I run webinars bi-weekly for business training. You can go to mybestyear.ca, go www.mybestyear.ca, or find me on Facebook, Business Impact Coaching, or on LinkedIn, Wes Kowalchuk.
I love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, Wes, that was a fantastic time. We could have extended this for another hour. This was great. One of the things here at Ready, Set, Rise is we have an opportunity to connect with amazing people, and I think Wes did a fantastic job. If you love what you heard, number one, subscribe, click like, and also would love to hear a comment on what are the few things that you got out of this show that really resonated with you. What we're going to do is, again, we will share Wes's contact information. Do yourself a favor, find yourself a coach, connect with Wes. If you're someone struggling, going through something, you're not alone. And, my advice to everyone is always, think big, be brave, live bold. With that said, guys, get ready, get set, rise. Thank you so much for joining us.